Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering Are You Happy Now and Planet of the Jellyfish. Well now, this is more like it. As in, this is more like some standout Season 8 episodes that I have absolutely no trouble remembering. And neither does the fandom. Now, in the case of Are You Happy Now, that better memory is not exactly a good thing because this episode has a poor reputation. But Planet of the Jellyfish? Well, that was Mimic Madness before Mimic Madness existed, if you catch my drift. If you don't catch my drift, what I'm basically saying is that this was the episode that modern SpongeBob haters glazed really, really hard. I'll talk more about this in today's closing thoughts if you want to hear more. As always, thank you all for checking out today's video. I love seeing y'all here every time. And now, let's just get right into it. Man, look at that title card. I don't even have anything to say, I just think it looks silly. Okay, but seriously, here we are with another notorious episode. Y'all know how much I love covering those. I say this with sarcasm, but there's also truth to it. It's always good to revisit an episode that had been written off for so long to see if I personally find that it was warranted and to put my own little spin on things that may or may not have been said many times over. I'll tell you what, though. I think I'm going to be saying some very different things to the majority of folks who have sat down and given this episode a review. In other words, I can really feel the pitchforks and torches coming this time. Are You Happy Now starts off with the lovely voice of the French narrator, and it's been some time since we've heard that voice outside of Timecodes. Or at least it feels that way to me. It's funny because I actually just watched a season 14 episode the day before writing this script, and I was thinking something kind of similar regarding the French narrator appearing outside of Timecodes, so that's kind of a funny coincidence. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Let me bring it back. When Are You Happy Now begins properly, we see SpongeBob annoying Squidward by being himself, which is of course their usual dynamic. Well, first we see Patrick eating out of a dumpster because random Patrick appearances are the name of the game, but back to SpongeBob and Squidward, I just love how SpongeBob's being a little weirdo, laughing and smiling at what turns out to be the Krusty Krab work schedule. It kind of makes me think of when I was in high school and they had blocked access to literally any fun site on the school computers, so I entertained myself using Google Maps. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Anyway, the episode hardly wastes any time getting into its plot as SpongeBob explains to Squidward that the Krusty Krab work schedule is his happy book, since the Krusty Krab is the location of all of SpongeBob's happiest memories. This makes Squidward, after being a dick and ruining SpongeBob's happy book on purpose, realize that he does not have a happiest memory. Well then, that's pretty sad actually, especially considering that we are, of course, watching a children's show. Though I shouldn't use that qualifier anymore because kids shows can and should be able to tackle topics like this. Like, this episode is literally about depression. It's made humorous, of course, but at the end of the day, Squidward is pretty obviously depressed, which I'll be pointing out a few different times. Now, Squidward not having a happiest memory in itself is not necessarily sad. Like, I myself do not have a happiest memory because I don't quantify my memories like that. And whenever someone even asks, like, what's one of your happiest memories, I can never give them an answer because it's hard to pull that kind of thing on demand. What was I saying? Right. So, Squidward not having a happiest memory isn't necessarily sad, but the episode is clearly making an allusion to depression based on how Squidward acts after this revelation. It also implies that Squidward has no happy memories at all, which is a bit different than being unable to choose a random happy memory. But even better is how the episode never forgets that a lot of Squidward's misery is brought onto himself. Need I remind you that he just tried to destroy SpongeBob's happy book for literally no reason at all? Moving on, SpongeBob decides that he's going to help Squidward find a happiest memory, and I think that this is really wholesome and a great plot for the episode. Again, it's kind of depressing, but it's also really sweet and calls to mind how sometimes the presence of a really good and supportive person can be a real help to people struggling with depression. I mean, whenever I'm experiencing a depressive episode, I know my friends and family can be a big help. Anyway, man, I'm tangenting a lot today. Squidward's attempts to make these happy memories being repeatedly foiled is pretty funny. Also, Fiasco being in this episode is interesting given the previous episode was literally his introduction. He was a visual artist in that episode, and here he's a performance one. I guess he's a multifaceted artist. Speaking of artists, I love the art that's in the background of the hot air balloon scene. Man, I really love this show's backgrounds. I also love how random this hot air balloon attempt was compared to the concert in the art museum. Like, I never imagined Squidward to be the type to enjoy this sort of outdoor adventure, but hey, maybe he just needs to try new things. After this attempt fails, though I love how SpongeBob and Squidward incidentally become the first people at the top of Mount Bikini, and Squidward humorously leaves SpongeBob in the avalanche they caused, we reach the part of the episode where the infamous allegations really kick in. Squidward declares that he will never have a happiest memory, and he becomes very clearly depressed. Like, textbook depressed. The fact that the time skip after Squidward gives up was 2 weeks, well, I'm not sure how intentional this was, because if it wasn't intentional, it's a big coincidence. What do I mean? Well, in the DSM-5, as well as the DSM-4, because that's the version that would have been consulted during the production of this episode, to meet the criteria for major depressive disorder, you need to be experiencing symptoms for 2 or more weeks. So yeah, that's a really big fucking coincidence to literally show Squidward experiencing these symptoms for 2 weeks. And then, well, y'all know what happens. We get not just one, but 2 suicide jokes, where the joke is that we're made to think Squidward is about to die by suicide, by sticking his head in the oven and then by putting up a rope, only for it to be revealed that he's doing something far more innocuous. These are, without a doubt, some very macabre jokes. They are also, I don't want to say subtle, although I think the one with the oven is rather subtle, but I think they are definitely jokes for the older kids and adults, because I'm not sure if a 7-year-old, assuming that they don't have the life experience necessary to make this association, would recognize that Squidward looks like he's about to tie a noose. We also get SpongeBob's line, at least we know he's still alive, when he sees Squidward in the window, which really hammers home the point of these little jokes here. Like with One Course Meal, these jokes are what really pushed this episode into being notorious for many, since just like that episode, many people don't like that the show utilized these kinds of suicide jokes. I think that's a fair perspective, but it's not one I share. I don't really find these jokes to be distasteful. They're morbidly funny, which is exactly what they're supposed to be. I'm pretty sure I said this exact same thing about One Course Meal, but I don't think this episode is making light of suicide or even depression at all by doing these jokes. I just think it's the show being a comedy. Like, of course they're gonna still make jokes even when the situation gets grim, that's what comedies do. I don't think having a couple jokes means the episode is saying that suicide is something we should, or isn't something we should take seriously. A distasteful suicide joke to me would be if someone actually went through with dying by suicide and then a joke was made after that, something that minimized the impact of it. These jokes don't do that. The joke from One Course Meal was much closer to doing that than these were, and I wasn't even mad at that one. I know I'm saying a lot, but I just want to make sure I'm clear with my thoughts here, since I think that while people have shared their dislike, there's never really any room made for a real conversation about these jokes or this topic, and people just quickly say their opinion and move on, you know? I think maybe we should instead have a conversation about whether this show should be handling topics like suicide and depression, and in that case I still say that it's okay with doing so, because in my opinion it's all about the message that's being sent. Is Are You Happy Now sending a harmful message with its depiction of depression and these nods towards suicide? Not really, because honestly I don't think it's sending any messages about depression at all. I think that it's just using Squidward's depression as a plot point and not making any commentary one way or another about it. It's not even really making a judgment about it other than maybe making us feel pity for Squidward. So I don't think this is a harmful depiction of any of these things. I can see why the jokes this episode makes can be upsetting to people, but I personally don't have a problem with it. Alright, that was a very long soapbox, and I kind of apologize. I'll move on now, I swear. So, after we see Squidward going about his day, SpongeBob kidnaps him and takes him to the Krusty Krab, where we see that he's set up a bunch of papier-mâché replicas of himself, because SpongeBob thinks that a party would cheer Squidward up. Although no one could make it to the party, a clever throwaway nod to the fact that nobody likes Squidward and his life is in fact a bit miserable. So that's why SpongeBob set up all the replicas. And well, the party works, just not the way he thought it would, because Squidward starts getting violent towards these replicas, which is deeply cathartic for him. This gives him his happiest memory, and keeps the real SpongeBob safe from the harm that Squidward is apparently wishing on him. Like, the man just cuts replicas down with a chainsaw. Jesus. This is one of those episodes that clearly works better if you've seen a good chunk of the show beforehand, because within these 11 minutes alone, SpongeBob doesn't really do anything to elicit this level of hatred out of Squidward. And then we get SpongeBob's ending line calling Squidward handsome. I'm gonna ignore that for at least 3 different reasons, 2 of which having to do with the fact that I already went on a soapbox today, and the last having to do with me not liking SquidBob, so please do not start. Yeah, so Are You Happy Now was a pretty enjoyable episode, I'd say. Perhaps surprisingly enjoyable given its notoriety, but I'm used to this kind of thing by now, liking those episodes that the fandom does not. I just liked what I saw. I thought this episode was pretty wholesome and also pretty funny, and I like how it wasn't afraid to dip into those morbid waters of portraying Squidward with depression. Well, I always think Squidward is depressed, but this episode really hammers it home by hitting on those more anhedonia like symptoms. Anyway, so all of this is why this episode is going to be put in my great tier, where it comes in with a score of 8.8 out of 10. Now, this is exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. Pardon my French. But I mean, come on. Y'all know I just love the episodes that take their inspiration from the horror genre, so you just know I adore the idea of this episode based on that alone. And I don't just adore the idea of this episode, I adore the entire thing, because it's really fucking good. You know what else this episode is? The inspiration for the fan game Around the Clock at Bikini Bottom. So that's an excellent association for this episode to have, because that game is amazing. Never played it, but I've watched people play it. Maybe one day I should play it, but I also hate being jump scared with my entire being, so maybe not. I linked the full playthrough of that game in the description if y'all are curious. Anyway, before I jump right in, can I just say that I love how literally nothing about the Jellians is explained? Like, it just makes it all more amusing to me. They're just creepy little jellyfish who are weak to mayonnaise for comedic purposes, and I guess they're trying to take over the world or something like that, but where they come from? Who knows? I love it. I also think that the Jellian King has a pretty cool design. If the episode had been a special, then it may have been good to have an explanation, but since the time was limited to 11 minutes, it was clear the creative team behind this episode thought that time was better spent elsewhere, and I agree. So now this episode is about as unexplained as Spongehenge, which itself was about as unexplained as The Twilight Zone. Alright, let's talk about the episode in more detail now. Planet of the Jellyfish begins with SpongeBob and Patrick jellyfishing at Jellyfish Fields, which is always nice to see. SpongeBob is having a grand old time, but Patrick is failing a lot, so he decides to take a nap. And while SpongeBob is messing around jellyfishing, we see the Jellian King, who then makes a bunch of Jellians, and one of them clones Patrick. The clone is left, and the real Patrick is taken away, and luckily for the Jellians, SpongeBob is supremely unobservant in this first part of the episode, so he does not suspect anything is amiss when Patrick suddenly has black eyes, and the jellyfish are suddenly acting really docile. I just love the offness of all the Jellian clones in this episode, starting with the Patrick clone here. Like, the cadence of the voice acting is great. I also love how suddenly aggressive the clones will get, like when SpongeBob and Jelly and Patrick pass by Squidward's place and Jelly and Patrick is like, he will take one and like it, because yeah, SpongeBob and Jelly and Patrick give Jellians to everyone in town, which sets up everyone becoming clones. Although SpongeBob is oblivious, unfortunately for the Jellians, he's an oblivious dude with plot armor, and so that night we get a few amusing foiled attempts of the Jellian to bite and clone SpongeBob. I especially love the bit with the popcorn. Gary, though, well, the poor guy does not remain unscathed, but since the Jellian that cloned him did so poorly, we at least get a cool design out of it merging Gary with the flower pot. Moving on to the next morning, SpongeBob heads to the Krusty Krab, and things continue to be great. Again, that offness of everyone now that they are Jellian clones is just fun to see, I like it, it's a good touch. I especially love the completely random inclusion that the Jellians hate mayo. Same, Jellians, same. Although, I don't explode when I eat mayo, so maybe not same. But eventually, not even SpongeBob can remain oblivious forever, and he figures out what's going on when he enters the freezer and sees the King Jellian hanging out with the cocooned bodies of everyone in town. Seeing SpongeBob try to act normal after this is pretty funny, especially when you think that the Jellians probably have no idea what normal even is. The bit with the random guy, aka Harold, is funny too. After SpongeBob runs away, we then get the surprise appearance of Sandy, which is a win for me because I always love seeing her, especially in these, like, big threat coming for Bikini Bottom type of episodes. No, seriously, she shows up in them a lot. We're not given a reason for why Sandy ended up not being cloned while everyone else was, and she wasn't mentioned as being left out when SpongeBob and Jelly and Patrick gave Jellians to everybody, but I'm choosing to believe that it's because of her breathing air. A Jellian probably couldn't survive in her tree dome without a helmet, and if it's wearing a helmet, it can't get to her, and when Sandy is wearing her own helmet and suit, a Jellian can't get to her. Though, considering we did see a Jellian clone non-living matter with that messed up cloning of Gary in the flower pot, maybe it could clone Sandy even with her suit. Or maybe it still has to be touching the individual in some way. I don't know. I'm clearly thinking way more about this than the episode did, so let me move on. I just think it's fun to go down these rabbit holes. Anyway, Sandy's interrogation of SpongeBob is pretty amusing, and when SpongeBob tries to Uno reverse the accusation back on her, I like how she just bitch slaps him. Sandy and SpongeBob infiltrate the Krusty Krab to save the town, and I think this bit of the two of them pretending to be Jellians is pretty fun as well. And again, some great voice acting since you can really tell that they are normal folks pretending to be cloned just through the voices. When they get their cover blown, we get a pretty great action sequence, if I do say so myself. We also get some fun quips when they face the King Jellian, and I can always enjoy some good hammy quips. Eventually, they do save the day quite handily through the use of mayonnaise and thermostat changes. Hopefully, Mr. Krabs will forgive them for that transgression. And then, I gotta say, Mr. Krabs selling the literal corpse of the King Jellian has gotta be up there with the grossest endings in this show. I'm not actually disgusted, but I mean, come on now. And then we, of course, have the very last line of Patrick ordering a patty, asking Squidward to hold the mayo, which then begs the question, are the Jellians actually gone? Does a preference for no mayo come transmitted with eating the literal corpse of the King Jellian? Who knows? I feel like I used to have a whole theory about this back in the day, and even if not, I kinda like how the episode ends with this open ending. So, Planet of the Jellyfish is simply what an amazing tier episode is all about. Like, it's not even in question. This episode is funny, it's interesting, it's entertaining, and it's just really damn good. Like, there is nothing bad I can say about this one at all. I suppose it would have been really cool if it was a special episode so we can spend more time in the Jellianified Bikini Bottom, but I'm perfectly happy with the episode as is, and let me just say that it's been a long time since I've seen an episode cultivate vibes this strongly. Like, not since Gone or maybe even Graveyard Shift. The point is, it's been a long time. And so all of this is why this episode is going in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9.6 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. Man, these reviews turned out to be a lot longer than I originally thought they would be. I made a lot of additions to the reviews I had on the forum, but I'm happy about it because I always feel better when I'm able to add a lot onto an old review. Anyway, so let me talk about the glazing of Planet of the Jellyfish by quote-unquote modern SpongeBob haters. That phrase is in quotations, of course, since this is middle-aged SpongeBob at best. Anyway, yeah, so back when hating on this era of the show during reviews was a big thing, people really glazed the ever-loving fuck out of this episode because it was, of course, a good episode. But see, what I've noticed about these sorts of fans, and this is true for like any fandom, is that they can never just say an episode is good. No. It's always about saying an episode is good and then using that to go right back around and say that the rest of this era is bad. They use it as proof of point that the rest of the era is bad since this episode is the best of the era in their eyes. I'm not gonna say if that's necessarily my opinion or not. That's just what the episode ranking videos are for. Something very similar happened with Mimic Madness, except that episode also became the entry point for a lot of people who hated these seasons of the show to restart with watching the show, so it's a little different. Am I making literally any sense right now? Because I expended all of my really detailed scripting during the scripts for the reviews, and so I'm just kind of vaguely asserting things that I don't feel like really getting into. But basically, what I'm saying is that while this episode more than deserves its good reputation, a lot of that reputation comes from these people glazing it while they continue to hate on the era of the show it originates from, and that irritates me. It feels like loving it for all the wrong reasons, you know? This isn't that much of a problem anymore now that the show has moved on by many seasons, and Mimic Madness has largely subsumed this episode's role in being the textbook modern SpongeBob haters' most glazed episode, but it's still something that I wanted to call back to because I was around for those times. I'm not old, but I've got history in this damn fandom, and I'll be damned if I don't refer to it regularly. Alright, but I think that's about it for today's video. I think I'm all talked out now, so I'm gonna go ahead and close things out here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.